That's driving our review this year. You know, a traditional loss prevention program, you know, 50%, the old adage was 50% was internal, 30% was all paper shortage, and then 20% was shoplifting. Well, the whole RSC aspect is really changing that up, because not only you have to look at those different percentages, but when you pool your resources in some of your larger flagship stores or your metro locations, that's easy to catch the bad guys, right? But with them getting smarter, the RSC group's getting smarter, calling stores, understanding who's who in corporate, being able to work that omni-channel opportunity. They're also going out into hitting multiple stores, more rural locations, etc. So it really challenges us in terms of planning shortage, or shortage reserve, etc. But so that there's a huge shortage impact. Not only are they just they're hitting some of the stores we may not have expected, but they're targeting certain areas. Some of our most common areas, most recently, would be more of your Chanel handbags, Burberry, some specific vendors and dresses, etc. So when they're going in and hitting those areas, not only are we incurring the shortage, but we're losing the sales because the merchandise just isn't there. So once you figure out that's, you know, we'll throw out a $5 million number, if that's the shortage that you just incurred, now you have to do something about it. So now we have to go to the CFO, you're asking for a payroll, you need $500,000 to build an ORC team, and the equipment, you gotta do a risk analysis. How much is it gonna cost to prevent some parts of that, whether it's showcases, security devices, technology. You're going to put an ORC team in. You need some remote viewing capability. All of that investment you're going to have to show a return on. So at the end of the day, what is the total EBITDA impact? So if you're that $5 million, you can reduce that in year 2 down to 2.5. Is that successful or not, based off the money you spent? So year 1, though, that $5 million needs to come from somewhere. So does that mean we're not going to open up a store? Does that mean we're not going to invest in a remodel? Where does that money come from? And how does that impact jobs? So, you know, we wanted to throw that in here, the cost of ORC, and how does that shape our decisions, and what part is important and what isn't. How does the traditional merchandise being taken out of the store, how does that compare to our impact of fraud? How does that impact the omni-channel experience? I can tell you we have ORC groups today that we're working with the Secret Service that figure out a way how to call our stores and identify themselves as corporate employees and able to procure the information on our customers. Not new, but the way they're doing it is new, and it's harder to track because we're dealing with IP addresses. It's all, and of course, the information is used online, and the IP addresses from the computers are all over the country. So it's not a person who figured it out; it's a group that figured it out. So that's, you know, that's not something that's happening in the store. So how do we strategize for that? When we try to figure out what is the key parts of our ORC program, it starts with education and awareness. You've heard this throughout the day, that the most important piece is the information. So our associates in the store, our loss prevention teams in the store, are they getting the information out, and are they getting the information back of what's really happening? Are we waiting until our annual or semi-annual inventory to start figuring out if there's a problem? And then who's causing the problem? Putting resources in place that are dedicated to ORC, whether that's human resources, whether it's a team that works on it solely on ORC, or whether that is a team that works on both internal and ORC. What does that look like? Then the capital piece. What resources do we need? What is the value of being able to do remote viewing? What is the value of putting other security devices in, preventative devices, tags, systems, RFID? We are looking at that. We we are doing some testing with RFID, and then how does that relate to the technology piece? So from a video analytics side, how can you start marrying that facial recognition with your IP cameras? How can you tie that into the alert you get when something that's not paid for walks out the door? The technology is there, it's just how do you bring it together in a cost-effective manner? Which leads into the investment in technology. You can spend millions and millions on technology, but what's the most important piece and where do you get your money back? We're also looking at video analytics, and what does that mean for us? What does that mean in terms of the as an investigative tool? Retail and law enforcement partnerships, I think this is what we've been talking about for a good part of the day, is establishing that relationship with the other retail communities and law enforcement communities. One of the things I thought was very interesting in some of the pharmacy drugstore chains could talk a bit more about it, is I know there was a test going where some of the major pharmacy chains were working together in a certain market and sharing all the information. It was an interesting concept, real time, to try and combat some of the ORC. Based off of a previous company I was with, we partnered very closely with Target and Walmart on that information. And we worked with Saks as well at Bloomingdale's in certain cases. So it's the same groups, segmented, but going through.
You mentioned a few moments ago about video analytics. Is that technology being used to store information relative to frequent shoplifters, someone that's been caught shoplifting many times in the past, and you store that database?
Well, video analytics is a little different than the retention of creating a database on the different shoplifting. There's different tools out there. There's AlertNet. There's different ways that retailers are working together to build a database on shoplifting and how often that occurs. And I'm not sure. I think we're talking to them about that as well. But that would be more of the video analytics. Is just taking the camera image and then putting analysis behind it to try and get some data out of it, and then hopefully a conclusion. So that type of you have all this data for RFID, for example. You have facial recognition. What does it mean? What does a trend show when? What does the trend analysis show when certain alerts happen? Does a certain face always pop up? Excuse me. When there is a situation where there's a shelf that was full, then all of a sudden it was empty. Does an alert pop up with that type of data? Where does it go, and what do you get out of it? It's traffic analysis, and as that happens. And then information gathering through research, interviews, and partnerships. How we train our teams in the field to gather that information is a big opportunity. So that's one of the things we're going to be rolling out. Every shoplifter, are they involved in RRC or not? What do we need to do to get that information? What questions should our teams in the stores be asking shoplifters when they're caught, to try and determine other ORC implications? Are they involved? And then start developing some strategies around that, some action plans, if that's a particular problem in that sort. Theft and reseller investigative strategy, so not just stopping when we make the apprehension, but then where is that being sold? Partnering with eBay, partnering with some of the other mass sellers at flea markets or resellers out there, getting out there and trying to figure out where this merchandise is going. A lot of that will be part of the conversation with the police department. And then, of course, aggressive prosecution. So there's just some statistics up here. The one that's not in here, I think last 15 months or so, we were able to associate 250 shoplifters with ORC teams. And we'll go into a couple of those teams in detail. Tom will take us through that. But between Macy's and Bloomingdale's,